How's it going, boys and girls? It is nothing short of a pleasure after three relatively underwhelming performances against Fulham. Yes, I know we won, but the second half performance left a lot to be desired. Leeds and Burnley to be coming at you with three great and what could prove to be vitally important wins against Chelsea, Leicester, and Arsenal. Now, I just want to say, obviously, if you're watching the video of this, you can also find it in podcast form, and I should be coming up with these with more frequency. But I've been working on a couple of projects recently, which hopefully should come to fruition in the next couple of weeks. But knowing this year, who knows? Now, with this overview, I just want to say there'll be a recurring theme of Everton not having much of the ball, but being extremely tactically sound as a collective unit off it, being really compact, often against Chelsea and Arsenal. I found playing a low block. The possession does increase over the course of the three games, but starting off with the Chelsea game, I believe we only had 28% possession, which, if ever there was an example of having a very knowledgeable Italian manager in comparison to a relatively inexperienced manager, this was it. Just prior to the game itself, I felt like obviously this was the first time in 9 months that fans were allowed inside Goodison Park, and I felt like this game beforehand gathered quite a bit of tension in the atmosphere around it almost. Unfortunately, and again, it kills me to say this, and I don't want to linger on it, but not being able to go the game absolutely kills me. So from social media, what I could gather, especially when the teams came out, for example, there was not a lot of confidence at all. Especially when the teams came out, I'd say an hour before kickoff, which I guess is understandable when you look at it on paper, man to man. I've got the lineup on a split screen alongside me here. You look at the likes of Timo Werner, Kai Havertz, and Olivier Giroud, who often seems to be getting on the score sheet against Everton. When you compare that to the Everton side of weeks prior, coming up with poor results, I understand why people weren't filled with confidence, especially when you consider the fact that we were without Luca Dean, James Rodriguez, and of course Seamus Coleman. And in particular, I think one of the man-to-man on paper, the man-to-man battle almost that you look at that doesn't fill you with confidence, which everybody was proved to be wrong with, was N'Golo Kante versus Gylfi Sigurdsson. Gylfi Sigurdsson has been somebody who's really stepped up in this run of three wins, as proven by on 22 minutes when he converted from 12 yards. Now, in the lead up to this penalty, and somebody who I think deserves a hell of a lot of credit, and for this Chelsea game was probably my man of the match, was Jordan Pickford. It was a long ball by Pickford himself, which Dominic Calvert-Lewin chased down and was clattered into by Eduardo Mendy, who eventually could not keep the spot kick out from Gylfi Sigurdsson. And from there, Everton, not going to lie, did come under a fair bit of pressure. Chelsea did respond. It wasn't too long after that I think Reece James had a free kick, which wasn't too much trouble for Jordan Pickford. He dealt with it comfortably enough, but not too long following his free kick himself, that save, Reece James had a dig from about, I'd say, between 20-25 yards. And I think the naked eye would say that the ball just hit the framework, hit the post, but after replays, you'd seen Jordan Pickford's got his fingertips to it, and it was absolutely outstanding. Jordan Pickford deserves all the praise in the world for that save and his performance throughout this game, because he was collected a fair few times, which I'll get onto later when I talk about the Leicester game. But from there, as I was saying earlier, that the collective unit of Everton was just too hard to break down. They picked the times to press and press high, usually a low block, but as I say, when we pressed high and looked to force errors out of Chelsea. I believe it was Alex Iwobi who pressed Chelsea into an error, which led to Richarlison creating a chance for himself, which he didn't manage to put away, forcing a save out of Mendy, which wasn't too much trouble, but Richarlison always does seem to scuff the chance, if you will, which he did not against Leicester, but as I say, that's for when the Leicester game rolls round. But yeah, in all honesty, despite not having much of the ball, Everton were okay. As I say, when you look at it on paper, the likes of Kai Havertz, Timo Werner, Kovacic, Mason Mount, who often create chances, they were limited to an extent. Chelsea only had one more shot than Everton. Everton had 9, Chelsea had 10. And the back line of Everton, or of all centre halves, due to the injury to our fullbacks, top credit goes to Mason Holgate and Ben Godfrey. Again, something that'll be a recurring theme throughout these overviews, that just looks sound and compact as a defensive unit. Towards the end of the game, was not without its drama, which again is something that comes up in the next 2 games as well. But I believe it was Mason Mount, that managed to hit the post or the crossbar in the remaining minutes of the game. It's very typical of Everton, really, but 3 points on the board, which teed us up for the Leicester game, which I will get into now. The Leicester game is one of them again. One of these teams that we're sort of neck and neck for in regards to finishing. Well, not finishing, it's far too early to say that, but we're competing with them regularly at the present moment, overtaking one another, for example, in that second spot. But sort of observing this game, Everton were much the better team. Yes, as I was saying, didn't have as much of the ball, only 39% possession this time at the King Power Stadium, but once they got into the game, I'd say over in 15 minutes, didn't have much of the ball at all. But Richarlison scored on around 21, 22 minutes, as did Sigurdsson in the game earlier. There seemed to be a sort of timestamp of when Everton scored the first goal in these games. I think Iwobi works it out to Richarlison on the inside left, who cuts in and gets a great shot off from around 25 yards. Great low drive, which Kasper Schmeichel can't get a strong enough hand to keep out. This is an instance where the attention was more on the keeper than it was on the goal scorer. If you're watching the video of this, I'm sorry about the red cup. But there's so many instances like this where a player scores a great goal, and because the keeper doesn't deal with it well enough, the spotlight sort of goes onto the keeper. Whereas in this case, full credit should go to Richarlison. I think, don't quote me on this, I think that's 4 goals in his last 5 against Leicester in an Everton shirt, which is a great turning. And he certainly knows where the net is against the Foxes. From there, as I say, Everton looked to impose themselves a bit more and seemed a lot more comfortable when they were on the ball. And just seeing it sort of same old story off the ball, really compact, solid, picked the times to press, and did it exceptionally well. The only negative, I would say, of the Leicester game was the injury to Alan, who looked to have pulled his hamstring. As somebody who's done that themselves, it did not look a comfy one at all, and he had to obviously leave the pitch through a stretcher. Feel for him immensely. And almost sort of similar to the game against West Ham, I think it was, in the League Cup, where he done his groin. I think it's just a byproduct of the fact that the man does everything at like 90 mile an hour. He does everything at a very sort of quick pace. Is closing down, and obviously done his hamstring in the process, which obviously is going to be a huge miss, especially with the likes of Man United coming up in the Carabao Cup. But that wasn't the case in the following game against Arsenal, which I'll get into in a minute. But on around, I think it was 72 minutes, one of my favourite players in the squad, Mason Holgate, who should be captain in my opinion, when Seamus Coleman isn't in, gets on the end of a goal-mouth scramble after a terrific corner delivery by Gylfi Sigurdsson. I think Dominic Calvert-Lewin forces a couple of good saves out of Kasper Schmeichel, who was switched on this time, but he could not keep Mason Holgate out for his first goal for Everton in the Premier League. And that was the end of a terrific away win, 2-0 for Everton, which really did put us in a strong position for the last game we've just gone against Arsenal. Onto that now, just getting the match centre up on who scored, just for a sort of statistical analysis of that. But again, one of these things, not much of the ball in comparison to these sort of possession-based teams. I grew up during Guardiola mania and the dominance of Pep Guardiola's Barcelona teams, but I was also raised, and often I had it told to me by my granddad in particular, that possession doesn't win you games of football. This is a sentiment that I do agree with to an extent. I would say it's much preferable when your team does have the ball and you're the ones that are in control, but at the same time, there's no one size fits all with football. There's plenty of ways to win a football game, and I will take not having much of the ball, but taking the 3 points all day long. But yeah, on to the Arsenal game, the most recent game at Goodison Park, and Everton come away 2-1 winners against Mikel Arteta's Arsenal. I take great pleasure in saying that. Mikel was one of my heroes growing up. Hurt me a little bit when he left. I don't think I'd been so upset about a player leaving since Rooney when I was a kid. So yeah, I take great pleasure in saying that. Yeah, I know it's unfortunate. Well, is it what they're going through at the minute? They're not playing well at all. I believe they're in around 15th, 16th place, which is not what you'd expect from Arsenal at all. Seem excellent in cup football, but league football this season, they just don't seem to know where it's at. Now, the Arsenal game, coming into it, obviously, as I was saying, with the injury to Alan, it was on the shoulders of Tom Davies to step in and take the man's place. Obviously, two completely different moulds of players. I think Tom, obviously, due to his age, is a lot slighter in his frame. But that aside, I wouldn't say Tom Davies had a bad game at all. Yes, I'll get into the actual sort of event of the game itself, and it was very poor penalty to give away, which he did give away. But that aside, looking at how he performed given the circumstances, I don't think he did badly. Seen a quote recently from Joe Royle, who said he's still got the utmost faith in Tom Davies to do a job and to fulfil his potential, which I would agree with, and fingers crossed he does. Now, onto the actual events of the game itself, and so yeah, an own goal by Rob Holding to open the scoring, which, unfortunate for Dominic Calvert-Lewin, it would have been his 15th goal in all competitions. I believe it was Alex Iwobi, again, someone who had a terrific performance, and someone that needs to be sort of commended for deputising for the absence of, for instance, of James Rodriguez, which I've got no problem in admitting that. I know a lot of people have sort of heard me be critical of Alex Iwobi for not turning in the figures that he should do. But he's really sort of stepped up in the absence of James Rodriguez. Has a good game against his former team. Puts the ball into the box. Dominic Calvert-Lewin looks to flash his head on it. It was probably going wide. And Rob Holden, the ball nicks off Rob Holden's foot and goes past Leno into the Arsenal net, putting us 1-up. Obviously fantastic. And, this sort of later on was obviously brought back to level pegging not too much longer. I believe it was like 10, 15 minutes later. As I said, Tom Davies gives a penalty away, which was converted by Nicolas Pepe, sending Jordan Pickford the wrong way, who was back in net, should I say. Failed to mention this during the Leicester preview, but Robin Olsen stepped in for Jordan Pickford during the Leicester game. Nothing critical to say about him whatsoever. Leicester were limited to very few chances and were misfiring. Andre Gomez was lucky to have not given that penalty away. VAR adjudicated for him to have touched the ball. I were there on the side of it being clumsy defending. And obviously VAR chalked off the penalty that Leicester were looking to have. And Jose Perez again was involved as Leicester put the ball in the back of the net, but he was judged to be offside. Sorry about that, should have put that in the Leicester game. But jumping back to the Arsenal game now. Back to level pegging, 1-1. And usually I would say most Evertonians, given that everything that they've been through, obviously I'm only, 22, so God, people can back me up from going through the 90s, that you'd expect, obviously, we just beat Chelsea, just beat Leicester, Arsenal bring it back to 1-0, Everton maybe will capitulate in the past from that position, but they didn't. They stuck to the principles that Carlo Ancelotti's obviously instilled in them following the 1-year anniversary of his appointment as manager, and got themselves back in it before the second half. In added time, another fantastic delivery by Gylfi Sigurdsson, as in the previous game for Mason Holgate's goal against Leicester, puts it on a plate for Yerry Mina at the front post, who, incidentally, if I'm not wrong again, has apparently scored all of his league goals for Everton in the 45th minute, or in added time in the first half, which I think is an interesting stat. This comes moments after Danny Ceballos took a swipe with him at his studs, which I was surprised to see Mina act so sort of level-headedly with. But there's no better revenge than getting on the score sheet moments later. Everton sorted out relatively comfortably in the second half. Solid, not much to report really. I think Arsenal, with them playing a 3-4-3, Everton had a lot more to consider in wide areas. But again, this is where the likes of Ben Godfrey deserves full praise for his performance. I think it was Ceballos who Godfrey put a crunching tackle in on, which I don't think Goodison's seen for a while, a challenge just like that. And I think, again, that's something that is going to stand Ben Godfrey in really good stead in endearing himself to Evertonians, which is crucial. Now, we saw the return of Seamus Coleman as well, who came on in place of Alex Iwobi to shore things up. Something that I'm sure people will be, very happy to see during a very hectic period. Getting your first team squad members back into the mix at match fitness. And something that I want to mention just before concluding the game, and a sort of drama that came in the last couple of minutes. 79th minute it was, because I made a note of it while I was watching on the telly. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, the throw in Everton's half, comes in, gets flicked on to Calvert-Lewin. Calvert-Lewin heads it on. There's no one there, so he follows it up, intercepts the follow-up. So he wins the second ball, and he puts through this pass that was reminiscent of Kaká's assist for Crespo in the 2005 Champions League final, and that's not me in any sense comparing Dominic Calvert-Lewin to Kaká. That's just me saying that seeing this creativity and that decisiveness to get the weight of the ball spot on really shows me that there's a different side to this lad's game that we're going to start seeing more of as the season progresses, and that excites me no end. To see a traditional hard knock of a number 9 put through balls like that, and show his sort of creativity, as I say, it's going to do nothing but make his market value go up, and hopefully it's going to make the players around him be better. Richarlison in this instance unfortunately could not put it away, but I just think that's something that should be made note of, and I've recently put it up on my Twitter for those wanting to check it out. And yeah, just to round up the game, similar to the last couple of games as well, a little bit of action to conclude. As I was saying, Everton were sort of getting overloaded. Arsenal were getting into it a bit more to try and nick themselves an equaliser in the wide areas. And if I'm not wrong, I think it was Saka who forced a save out of Jordan Pickford, who was back in the starting 11 in the added time before the game concluded. Kieran Tierney was one of the few positives for Arsenal, I would say, getting up and down the line and creating chances. He ultimately forced a space open for Saka, who did not put it away for Arsenal. And again, Everton completed their streak of 3 really impressive wins, and wins that I will say that could prove vitally important in the long run for this season. Anyone that's known me for long enough will know that I say the most important time for a team in England to pick up points in a game is during the December Christmas period. If you can build your confidence and points simultaneously, that will, stand you in good stead. Unfortunately, due to the results in the Tottenham-Leicester game, Manchester United beating Leeds, I think it was 6-2. God knows how Manchester United have got back up there in the table. Everton won't be going into Christmas Day 2020 in second place. They'll be going in still in the Champions League places in fourth, which I'm sure a lot of people will be happy with at the end of the day. This is 1 year after Carlo Ancelotti's appointment as Everton manager, and he'll take the Champions League places all day long. And I will say, I can't remember it off the top of my head. I seen a really impressive stat by EFC Stato, it was, on Twitter, that I think this is the 26th time in their history that Everton will be going into Christmas in the top flight in top 4 places. Only on 2 occasions haven't they finished in the top 4. So if you believe in that stuff, that certainly stands us in good stead going forward. Now, that just about wraps it up. With, at this moment in time, Manchester United is an evening kickoff tomorrow in the quarterfinals of the League Cup, which, given our form in the League Cup this season, you want that win all day long. They've obviously got one over us, beating us at Goodison a few weeks prior. Look to be in good form after absolutely thrashing Leeds at the weekend just gone. And hopefully that can add to motivation for Everton to want to turn them over. Thanks for tuning in, and I know I'll pop in again after the United game and the game on Boxing Day and whatnot, but happy holidays to everyone. Up the toffees.